Chief, you ready? City Attorney ready? Brian, are we good? Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see everybody out this evening. If you would, please stand and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So it's good to see everybody tonight. So I'll ask you to indulge us a little bit because the agenda that you have before you was developed and published on Thursday, but by its very nature, this has been a very quickly evolving situation and things have been changing right up until today. So the topics that you see on the agenda do echo the topics that we will be discussing tonight, but we may not be going right from A to B to C the way it's laid out here. The other change to the agenda I'd like to point out is that if you notice on this agenda, there's no place for public comment. We are having public comment tonight after I kind of provide an overview of what we will be discussing so that you can tailor your comments maybe a little differently. Then we will have a period of public comment subject to the same rules as a regular council meeting, the 3-minute time limit. So if anybody didn't know that and you want to speak, you can fill out the forms that are in the back of the room there where Mr. McClellan is and give them to the city clerk. So tonight, the acting city manager, I'll probably just keep calling him chief because I've got years of momentum built up here in calling him chief. But the ex officio city manager, Chief Albano, and I will walk you through some of what we think are good plans. Now, we don't presume to speak for the council, and we will put options before you and ask you. We will also have recommendations, but we will present all options. We have not filtered the options to give you only what we like. We will give you all the options. There aren't that many, so it's not like you have a smorgasbord, but there are some choices to be made tonight. We will have 2 action points that we will be asking the council to act on, and those will become apparent during the presentation. So for the members of the public present, this meeting is not primarily to talk about the process for identifying a permanent replacement city manager. That will come. And we probably will have some discussion on that tonight, but that is not the primary purpose of this meeting. The primary purpose tonight will be to talk about the immediate steps that we need to do to keep the operations of the city functioning well. What are the next steps that we need to do to get over the transition period? And then we will have some discussion about what we think we should do for finding a permanent replacement, but that's not primarily the purpose. You're certainly willing to talk about anything you like here tonight, and your 3 minutes is your 3 minutes, but this primarily is not for us to talk about, well, we'd like to see these qualifications, or we'd like to see the next city manager live in the city, or whatever those things are. I would like to assure the public that we will have lots of opportunity for public input on those issues, but primarily not tonight. I mean, you can talk about it if you want, but that's not really what we're deciding tonight. Does that make sense? Okay. So with that, are there any questions moving forward before we start? No. Okay, Cheryl, could you put our presentation up, please? Now, as you'll see, tonight will be presented by Chief Albano and myself. But before we even start, I want everybody to understand that although he and I are the ones presenting this, this is the product of a lot of people's, there's been a lot of work by a lot of people over the past week. And we have, so what you're seeing is not just something that he and I went to a room and came out with. We have talked to, God, I don't even know, dozens and dozens of people. We have talked to the Florida League of Cities. I've talked to the Florida League of Mayors, some of my mayor counterparts, other cities that have gone through this. We've talked to the City County Management Association. We have talked to some residents. We have talked to our staff. Many of our directors have worked in other cities and have maintained those relationships. We've talked to other city managers. We've talked to mayors. Who did I leave out? We talked to every single employee together. We had about a 2-hour meeting with our community development staff. So every single employee in community development from the top down has had some input into this. And so, in fact, some of them were more than input. Some of these were their ideas. So this work that you'll see is not just the work of the chief and I. This is the work that dozens of people have been involved in. And if I start naming names, I'll forget people. But our charter officers have been involved in this. We have utilized extensive resources just to get here tonight. So I think we've talked to all the right people. We've gotten a tremendous amount of advice from other people, and I think we're on a healthy path. So, next slide, Cheryl. She told me it would be slow for her typing the minutes and changing the slides too. So the priorities as we see it really fall into 3 phases. The first phase is stabilization. And those are those things that we need to take immediate action on in order to keep the city services functioning at the level that our community expects. Most of the stabilization phase, the immediate actions concern the functions of the community development department, as you'll see in a minute. That's really where most of the immediate concern is, because the 2 people in our employ that had building official certification no longer work here. So that leaves us without a building official. And by state law, there are certain functions that our community development department cannot do unless they're under the umbrella of a building official, even if they're certified to do it. So that is obviously something that had to be solved Wednesday. And so the chief will walk you through in a minute those steps that we've taken. That will be an action item that we are going to ask you for some action tonight to get us over the next 60 to 90 days. The second area is the transition, the kind of the short-term immediate thing. What do we do for the next 6 months? And keep in mind, the backdrop for this is that we are entering into the budget development season. So these are less urgent, but they are urgent steps also, because if we don't begin the budget process in earnest until mid-April, we're going to really be behind the 8 ball. So there's some urgency to this. It's not as urgent as the stabilization, but it is urgent. And we will be asking you to take some action tonight on some options that we will put before you also. And then the third phase is the phase that most people really want to talk about, and that is, what do we do in the long term about replacing, getting the right qualified, and what kind of qualities are we looking for? How do we conduct a search? How will that process look? We will talk briefly, well, I say briefly, we'll talk all you want, but I mean, we will talk about the recovery phase to some extent tonight, but that is a long term. I mean, we will probably start really digging into that in earnest, maybe in a month or so after we get the first 2 phases kind of under our belt. So that's the flow of what we will be asking of you tonight. Are there questions so far, or comments? Or? No. Okay, we're good with the basic framework then. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Albano at this point, and he will walk you through, because he's primarily been the lead on this side of the efforts this week, and so he can tell you in greater detail than I can. Well, I'll let him brief you. So, Chief, would you walk them through this and what the needs are and what the priorities and well, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. Stabilization, for me, began the moment the mayor asked or offered a motion, and you guys seconded it and voted on it, and placed upon my shoulders the responsibility to move the city forward. Stabilization for me began with a conversation with the mayor immediately following the council meeting that night, where we discussed rather, what was obvious to us would be the need in our community development department because of the loss of our building official and our city manager, as the mayor stated, our backup to the building official. No business, or a great many areas of business conducted by community development, cannot be done without the umbrella, as the mayor stated, of a building official in place. We also talked about, and I shared with the mayor that I would call a directors meeting so that I could address, the mayor offered some comments to our senior leadership as well. Wanted to try to meet with them to reassure them that we were going to ensure that we met the most immediate needs, that we were going to triage, for lack of a better word, other needs, which is why I thought it was very important to get our directors together so that they could share with us, with me, what they saw as immediate needs. And I asked, if it's not an immediate need, to put it on the back burner, type it up, get it to me, because I want to know about all the needs, but we had to address the most immediate needs first. After that meeting, we met with all of community development, and we identified some additional needs other than our building official that we felt were very important to get some relief going in those areas. One, in permitting. Permitting needed the assistance of an additional body to help catch up. When you put permitting in a situation where they are pretty much the face of everyone sees when they walk into City Hall, and regardless of if they needed permitting or not, permitting fields a lot of questions. And so, not any fault of their own, but by the nature of where they are and the flow of traffic into the city, especially once we reopened, they've gotten behind. So we talked about some ways we could be of assistance there to address that without, at least temporarily, the need to go outside and hire a temp. We were able to identify and provide a light duty member of our fire department, and thanks to Chief Kemp for that. I haven't been able to follow up and check on that, but I know that they've already been down there, and the assistance needed has been at least learned what task will be, and will be ongoing in order to get permitting back up to speed. Later, well, actually on the 3rd, on February 3rd, which would be Wednesday, I reached out, well, actually, no, that night, I reached out to the city manager. So still on Wednesday, I reached out to the city manager of Plant City and asked permission to speak with their building official. And was met immediately with, don't steal him away from us. And, you know, at first I chuckled too, but it's because of my lack of knowledge and understanding of just how valuable the people in this field are. It is very difficult to get inspectors, much less to be able to acquire the services of a building official, because the private sector can offer substantially more dollars to those people in those fields. So filling that position is going to be difficult. I promised him that wouldn't be the case. I just wanted to add to my knowledge. Our senior planner, Gus Carpus, had already shared an outside vendor that could provide some services, and I later found out when I contacted that vendor on Thursday that Charles, our former city manager, had already actually reached out to them, I'm assuming because of the events that transpired on Monday with our building official. So from there, on Thursday morning, I reached out to Deputy County Administrator Greg Horwadell, and I explained our situation to him, and was met with immediate, no pause in the breath, immediate assurance that the county would come to our assistance. Now, he followed that up with, and I understand that this assistance had to be, defined, and it certainly couldn't be something that didn't have limits attached to it, because they too have a lot of work going on throughout the county, and a permanent fix to the situation that we find ourselves in could not be offered even by a building department as large as the county's. I assured him that that was not the case, that we just needed a little bit of time to identify some vendors that could provide this service to the city. A couple of weeks, I felt, certainly I knew we had this meeting today, so I asked for a couple of weeks, during which time an inspector would be provided. They would operate obviously under the umbrella of the building official of the county, because you have to have a building official. That in and of itself allowed not only our operations to continue, but assured that we would have the services of a trained and certified inspector to help us with the commercial MEPs, specifically an area that is not one of the certifications that our current building official holds. And after, in a meeting that we shared with you already with community development, it was determined that that would be the most pressing need as far as inspections that we would be facing, until such time as that we could identify and put into place our own temporary or permanent building official. So a big thank you to them for providing that relief for us. I've had conversation with our city attorney and with our finance director, and having had those conversations, have been assured that this situation and the emergency that it places us in does qualify as an exemption to our purchasing manual under exceptions to the bidding procedures, which allows us in circumstances such as this to sidestep the normal business requirement of putting out a RFP, RFQ to be able to hire a building official or any other services associated with the building department that were deemed equally emergency type purchases. And that's necessary if they exceed $25,000. During this same time, I began having conversation, and Captain Staley helped me. As I mentioned before, I had already spoken with our senior planner, and he offered a recommendation of a company that he was familiar with from his former position at another city. I got recommendations, or at least words of wisdom offered from the county, from Plant City's building official. So I had a pretty decent, at least, starting point to go on. Some of those were eliminated. One was eliminated because, well, some were eliminated because they couldn't provide the services that we needed. One because that they had ongoing business in the city and they felt it would be a conflict of interest. So I believe with all the sources that I reached out to, that I pulled together with the assistance of my staff, a quality group of which we currently have one that stands for me a little bit above the rest at this point. I would deem them, if this was RFP, RFQ, they were certainly the most responsive to me, and they have the means to immediately provide relief and assistance with a building official to the city that would meet the needs of both. As we do business here, the building official does both jobs. They are the building official, and they also handle the inspections that are outside the scope of what our other inspector can, because of the certifications required to do, which is our commercial MEPs. This company also, at the discretion of council, they have offered these services in place. They have went out to bid. There's a current contract that they have with well, there's a current contract that they have that I thought I brought with me, and I did. with Castleberry that would allow us to go through a piggyback contract, which has been vetted through their RFQ process. And as I said earlier, the state of emergency that we find ourselves in with the need for this building official being as pressing as it is, council can also decide if they choose to allow us to proceed with the recommendations of our finance director already in place. That's one of the caveats, that it has to be vetted through the finance director, and she's already offered that. So it would be council's decision on which way that they deem most appropriate for me to proceed. I would ask, as the mayor said, this is critically important to our building department. We've already got several calls. The mayor, thank you, sir, authored a letter that we could share with our contractors who desperately need approvals to continue. Now, we have a stopgap. The county's helping us, but that's 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And this company, through whichever way that the council deemed most appropriate, is ready and able to provide the services as early as tomorrow, I've been told. So that's where we find ourselves with respect to the need for the building official. It's on the list there, a contract for services up to 90 days. I am very concerned with our ability, and certainly we can immediately put it out. I mean, this would be a stopgap. We could put it out and seek to hire a new building official, and we will. But the 90-day window, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to be able to meet that, but what I can promise and assure council is before that 90 days is up, I can, or whoever the interim city manager is, and I will assist them with providing them the promise that I'm making, that they come back to council and report exactly what the expense to date is. All these companies, they work on an hourly rate, so it's not going to be that difficult to tabulate what's been done and what the cost is, so we can keep council apprised of that. Move forward with a search for our building official, if that's the direction of council, or continue with the contract if that's the desire of city council. So that is stabilization as I see it for the most pressing need, but let me assure you that we will continue to have discussions. I'm going to haven't made it to all the directors one-on-one yet, but I intend to do that. I intend to do what I can to address the needs of our departments and to prepare us as best I can for the transition to your permanent interim city manager, and with that I'll stand for questions.
So I'll just add one thing to that. The chief and I have had many discussions with finance and with our legal staff about this. The reason that you see the 90-day up to 90 days is because that gives us breathing room. If in fact we get to 60 days or 45 days and we realize that we're not getting any traction, that gives us enough time then to come back before you through our normal procurement procedures and do this according to our normal procedures as opposed to on emergency basis. So we're trying to avoid any perception that we're fixing a problem that was caused by sloppy procurement with sloppy procurement. That's the reason that we put up to 90 days. But the truth is, we have to, this is the most immediate action item in the city right now. We can't function without a building official, and we can, now the chief, thanks to the county and the chief's connections, and I talked to Bonnie Wise at the county the day before the chief talked to, they've been very supportive, and I don't know if everybody realizes what a generous thing it is for them to give us 2 weeks of a commercial inspector and a building official. That's a big thing because they're swamped. And so, next time you see the county, tell them thank you. But up to 90 days, so that if we can get a building official hired, then our problem is solved. If we can't, we can go through the normal procurement procedures to get a company for the next term. So prior to, I'm sorry, Chief, go ahead.
No, I would just like to say as well, if it is your decision to go through the piggyback process, technically that also gives us the ability, I mean, that would be something that has already been vetted and gone through the purchasing processes and the RFP, RFQ requirements at a city. So, I mean, having that in place allows you even more latitude. It's totally up to you which way you want us to go. We have the authorization, as the mayor said, to go either direction.
Right. If we piggyback, we could do that normally. So prior to questions for the chief, though, I do want to allow public comment, and it's a little out of order. I apologize. I don't have a playbook for this like we do the normal council meetings. I do have one request to speak by David Pogorlich, but I don't know if this is what you want to speak about or the next item, which is the interim city manager discussion. You can speak on both, really. They're different topics. So if there are any members of the public who wish to speak on this topic, I welcome you. Nobody. Council member questions for Chief Albano? If not, then we need a motion, and the motion should distinguish which purchasing route we should take. My personal preference would be for the piggyback, but both options are available to you if you see fit to go the other route. Or other suggestions if you have some other ideas that we've missed.
So
Councilmember Abel?
the piggyback with Castleberry, that was the first option, right?
Yes.
And the other one, how can we summarize in 2 or 3 words? Like,
The other one would be to exercise our emergency procurement procedures per our rules. Councilmember Chambers?
The piggyback motion, what company would that be?
They can't hear you.
Well, Brian, turn it up. The piggyback motion, what company would that be?
Chief?
It's safe built.
Company called Safe Built.
And they have offices where?
They have an office in Tampa. They have an office in Orlando. They have a couple more offices outside our region, but they're across the state.
Okay. I guess I have one more.
Sure.
If we go with the regular emergency procurement, what company would that be?
Same.
Safe Built.
Just which way you want to.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, we have 2 funding avenues available to us. They're both legal, they're both per our rules, they're both been vetted by our attorneys and our finance staff. We can go either way. To me, either way is legitimate. It just seems more transparent to piggyback on somebody else's because that's been through the public process. But that's, either way is legal.
And what is the funding source?
The funding source for this will be the building official's salary.
Okay.
That's what the funding source will be.
Okay, are you ready for a motion?
I am, well, I am unless there are other questions.
I have another
Councilmember
question.
Abel.
do we have a financial idea about the difference between the piggyback versus the procurement issue?
No, it's no different.
It's the
It's
same.
just do you want to legally do it this way or do you want to legally do it this way? We're getting to the same company, the same rate of pay, the same, it's just which avenue. There's 2 legal avenues. We even discussed whether to present this to you or not, but we're committed throughout this not to filter any information from you. So we're probably making more of this than there really is. We have 2 ways to go. The finance director says, it doesn't matter to me, you just have to tell me which way which umbrella are we gonna stay under? And that's pretty much what the city attorney said too, is just, you have to define which of these provisions you're citing to make this legitimate. Is he?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm sorry, Councilmember Schistler.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. I do have a question. Which is quicker turnaround to getting work started?
I don't think it matters according to what we've been told, Vice Mayor. They just need to know which.
Well, I probably don't get a vote in this one due to my circumstances of being not present, but I do like to piggyback. I believe that would work better. And That's just a personal preference.
Okay,
We can get started as quickly as possible.
okay. Vice Mayor, hold on just one second, because it is my understanding that you can vote. Is that, so
Oh, okay.
you can vote tonight, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Very good.
And you can make motions or,
Okay.
so,
Okay, that's good to know. All right, cool.
Councilmember Chambers.
Yeah, I move that we piggyback on the Castleberry bid.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Vice
Aye.
Mayor? Okay. Any nays? No nays? I think that's all we have on the transition phase. Okay. Can you put the presentation back up and go to the next slide? Or no, this is my slide. Okay. So that brings us to the next topic, which is the transition phase. And there's a fork in the road here, and we have two ways that we can go. And I have clear recommendations. The chief and I agree on which way we think we should go, but again, this is not filtered. So I'm going to give you both options and then tell you why I think option B is the best one. The first option is to conduct an abbreviated recruitment for the interim city manager. I've talked to many places. Probably the one I talked to at the most length over this was the Florida City County Management Association Senior Advisor. And she was a wealth of knowledge. This is new to us, but it's not new to them. There's plenty of people who have been through this and much, much worse. And she gave me a lot of insights into this, and she talked about the process and how to get the process in place, and they're willing to help our HR walk them through this process if this is the path that we choose. And what we would do is identify a pool of finalists, and then we would select the interim city manager, who would then serve until we can identify a permanent solution. Not to shoot this down, but let me tell you a few things that I don't like about this path. And this is the path we were going down until the other option emerged. If you start doing some math here, even if we move ahead at rapid speed, it'll take us a week, well, probably the end of this week at least, to come up with a revised job description and to put a solicitation out to candidates to ask them to apply. She recommended that the shortest period that we could realistically do this and it be a meaningful process would be 2 weeks. So now we're at 3 weeks. If then we then take 2 weeks to vet the finalists, right, which is probably not too far off, maybe it could be 1, but probably be a week or 2 to vet the finalists. And then if we selected a person, probably a week to negotiate the terms of their contract, their salary, and those types of things. And then another week or 2, depending on the calendar, to get that before council for final approval. Well, if you add all that together, that's 7 to 8 weeks. And that puts us, in the first half of April. If you overlay that with the timetable of our budget process, that does not work real well. So that's the avenue we were going down until option B emerged. Can you put the slide back up, please? Option B is a company called Imagine That Performance, LLC. And I will tell you a little bit about them. They approached us. We did not go out. They approached us and says, hey, we have a company that's special. This is what we do. We help cities through these turbulent times, and we help them to identify the processes that need to be identified. We help them with the crisis that we're having with community development. Sometimes it's a finance problem. Sometimes it's the last city that I'm aware they worked with is close. It's over in Pinellas County, and they had a much bigger problem than we had. Their entire staff quit. Now, they're much smaller than we are. They don't have hundreds of people, but they lost everything. They lost all their stuff. I mean, their whole staff left. And so this company came in, the council acted very quickly to bring them in, and they had to run the city until they could identify a new city manager and get people in place to run the thing. So they speak very highly of this company. I have done, the chief and I and everybody's, we've kind of done our research, and everybody, I mean, what they've done is assembled a really top-notch team of national leaders in different disciplines, city managers, finance directors, HR professionals, and these are really, you know, these are the top folks. If you look at their team and then you start Googling who's on their team, it's like, this is, and you talk about bringing in professional management, this is it. One of the things, there's several things I like about this. One is, just like the building official vendor, these folks can be on the ground this week, right? So, and we could use that. We could use their expertise to help us, because we have 90 days now. You just gave us 90 days on the building official. That's going to go back like that. They can help us this week start the process of identifying a building official, or determining that, well, you should be outsourcing that anyway. Maybe, you know, they can help us get through that. They can bring a transition team approach to this instead of just finding a good individual. Now we have the resources of this whole team. So it's truly a transition team. So if the city manager, the interim city manager, identifies that we need help in finance or HR or utilities, whatever it might be, if they don't have the level of expertise in that particular discipline, it's available to them the next day. So as these issues, because we don't know what we don't know either. I think we function pretty well, but we don't know where the holes might be. I like the idea that they can do that for us, particularly as we enter into budget season, because we've had some rocky budget seasons. So having that depth available to us provides me with some comfort. Another thing that the FCCMA pointed out to me was, if you find an interim city manager, if you're fortunate enough to find one that lives in the area, you're lucky. But oftentimes they don't. They're coming from the East Coast or the Panhandle or South Florida or wherever, and it's customary for an interim to receive a housing allowance in addition to their salary because they don't own a house here. And so she told me, she goes, you can very quickly be looking at, you know, $150,000 for their salary and another $50,000 or $60,000 for their housing allowance. So that's an issue. We don't have to worry about that if we go with option B. Plus, they can help us begin the recruiting process for the permanent solution, the permanent city manager. We can begin that process much quicker if we're not stuck for 8 weeks working on the recruiting process for an interim city manager. So I think the transition would be healthier, more timely, more robust, and we would recover stability in the city quicker than we will if we have to go out. And I also, another thing in the backdrop that keeps nagging on me is the ability to keep these ARPA projects on track, because as you know, we have $13 million, but we don't have it forever, right? There's a clock running on that too. And the more time we lose identifying an interim, the more time we lose on those projects too. So I like the idea. In the interest of fairness, we did not allow them to do a presentation tonight because we didn't advertise this, we didn't go out, and although it's not illegal, we felt that it looked a little unfair to have them do a presentation when maybe there's another company that said, well, if I'd have known you were looking, I would have, you know, come too. They are here, and I believe that we're okay if there are questions. Is that correct? Yeah. And so it's, in my mind, this is the best way to go. It's not cheap, But if you start adding together what it would cost us to do a search for an interim city manager and then potentially a housing allowance and all these things, you'll find that we're in the same ballpark, if not more, either way. And so my recommendation is to go with option B, although, there may be things to talk about here and there may be other ideas that the council has that we haven't vetted to. Chief?
Mr. Mayor, there was one more thing that you had shared with me in our discussions that you may want to share with council. I know you did. It's about the interim through this process not being a candidate for.
Good, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Chief. And we you have to bear with us. We've both been through so many discussions in the past week. We're starting to all kind of run together. But the other thing, and this is important to me. Now, I don't know how you feel about it as a council, so this is just me speaking. Personally, I think it's important that whoever we identify as the interim city manager, in my mind, should not be permitted to apply for the permanent position. And I'll tell you why, because in my mind, if we get a good interim, which would be great, that's what we hope for, if we get a good interim city manager, they become comfortable. We get to know them, they get to know us, things run good, the directors get to know them, things are going well, everything's okay. But we don't know what we might be missing, and we won't give the applicants a fair shake because, well, we know, Jim. We've gotten comfortable with Jim, and then even though we do a process and we get 5 other applicants, wouldn't it just be easier to keep Jim, right? Why do we have to go through this upheaval again? I personally, I think it's healthy it's disruptive, yes. But if we really want to get the top candidates, we need to be willing to go out and see what's out there nationally and see. And I don't think we will, I think we'd be shortcutting the process. That's just my opinion. And we don't have that concern if we go with Imagine That Performance. That's not an issue. They don't do permanent, so. And that, I think that's all I have on that. So before there are questions, are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Mr. Pogorlich.
Can't talk when my eyes are fogged up. David Pogorlich, 1534 North River Hills Drive. I came here with two items to speak to you, and I didn't know Rob was going to be here, but now I have 3. The first one is I want to commend you. I want to repeat that, commend, not condemn, you for doing what you have done over these months. I know a lot of you have been frustrated with some of the actions of the previous city manager, but you didn't let that get in the way of doing city business. You waited until you had something that by all accounts are or is a violation of his contract, and you acted on that and that alone. So I commend you for that. Secondly, as you walk down this path of getting a new city manager, I would hope, and I know it's all in the back of your mind, you're probably preaching to the choir, but I would hope that you would find a leader that can walk us positively into the future and that has equal respect for you, the council, our directors, the employees, as well as all the citizens. And then lastly, I didn't know Rob was going to be here, but since he is, I want to tell you that I've known Rob for quite a few years. And quite frankly, when he and I first encountered each other, I was not a believer. And spending a lot of time with Rob and him walking us through some other things that he has done, I'm a believer. If Rob tells you it's going to happen, it'll happen. He's an intelligent man. He's very ethical. And if there is a fault, he undersells. So you can expect greater things than what he tells you will happen. And with that, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Are there other members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Mr. McClellan? Welcome, sir. Good to see you.
Good to be seen. This may be out of order. I had a comment that came up after y'all talked about the building inspection, and it was hard for me to have public comment without having heard the discussion because I didn't have an opinion on what. Is it all right to mention anything about that?
Sure.
I just wanted to ask, we are in the midst of putting together, building a new dry storage warehouse. We're not probably to the point that the city even knows it yet, but I wanted to ask if there are other options than the Castleberry piggyback organization. Will there be anything that allows the city, Interim, whoever it is, to help us expedite and move forward with something besides getting bogged down possibly with an outside organization? I don't mean that in a derogatory manner, but we do business with local architects and contractors and things of that nature. And I'm simply saying if they bring something to the table that makes sense, that expedites, and it might even, by expediting, make it cheaper for our company, is it something that would be disallowed as a result of going the piggyback route because they now become the enforcer of the rules?
Good question, Mr. McClellan. I'm not sure I have the answer, but the chief seems to have some information on this.
Dale, I would just like to offer to you, even before 2 days ago, when I was talking to Cheryl, who's our residential building inspector, I really made it clear to her, this company's coming in and we need the umbrella of the building official, but the services that are provided, we're going to make it clear through our staff what the expectation for those services are. Now, the contract spells out what they do, not the level of engagement and customer service that we hopefully have built that trust with you and others. That's why right now our developers are shaky, because they know it's a tough time for us, but they're understanding it, and that's not going to happen. Number one, I've already talked to Cheryl about that, and there's going to be close communication between the person that gets here, who lives regionally, and is going to be able to provide the services that we expect. If you have any issues, as long as I'm in this chair, you share them with me, please. And when I don't, when that interim person begins, they're going to get a briefing from me on everything that I know up to the present day, and that will include the operations of our inspections and our community development department. So if you, for any reason, feel that there's a decline in the services that we're providing, please reach out to whomever that may be, or while I sit here, to me. That's not going to happen.
And I appreciate it, and I absolutely believe you, and I admire you guys for being able to accomplish what you have in the last ever how long it's been, but I'm going to say 5 days. It just concerns me because we do spend a large amount of money on outside storage, and when I'm listening, I'm hearing slow down. That's my brain, not yours. Sometimes people say orange and I hear watermelon, I'll admit that. But I just want to make sure that if it's even possible, I hope it's still possible after that, that if there's something a local person can do to help expedite. I've been texting our architect while this meeting was going on, and he said, well, I heard there was without, but we have the right people in place. And what that means, I don't know, but I think it means that for communication. And I just hope that we don't do anything as a city to allow things to get bogged down. I think I'm past my 3 minutes.
That's okay, Dale. No, stay up here, because this is really a good opportunity for me to speak to you, but also the broader, because you're not the only developer construction. There's a lot of commercial construction going on, and I've had a lot of not heartburn, but a lot of worry this past week. So you're not just speaking for yourself. There's a lot of other people out there. And your project's in the future, but we currently have millions of dollars worth of projects that are already underway. And so Wednesday, it wasn't a good day for the chief or I either one on Wednesday when we saw the stack of unfilled commercial inspections that had been needing to be done and find out that we can't even do them. So thank God the county came through for us and helped us with that. So we hear what you're saying. Both of us have learned a lot about building inspections in the past few days, and we are committed. We cannot afford as a city to let this slow down for a lot of reasons. One, because it's bad for you individually, but we also recognize that we as a city cannot allow our construction projects to become slow, hard to get an inspection. You got people sitting, your contractors are sitting around not working. You can't get things done, and we also know that you have to have your building done by a certain date very often, or you lose your tenants in certain, so we get it, we understand. Now, we are kind of going day by day here, but we do understand that we can't get in the position that you're worried about. And so I'm hoping that the steps we're taking are gonna keep us from, but if they don't, we'll get back up here and we'll figure out what we have to do, because the reputation of the city is also for future development. We can't allow that to happen. So thank you for bringing that up, because we hadn't really said that, but I understand completely what you're saying.
You know, and I understand what kind of pain you guys must have been through to do all the things y'all have had to do. I get it. I like Charles, but I get it. He worked with y'all, and y'all know the facts. I just liked him, but time to move on. There's a new day in Temple Terrace. We are very close to starting. We have done all the work, the drawings, the surveys, everything that we need to do to build is kind of done except for turning it in. So I'm just not begging of you guys to do anything except continue what we have had. We've had a good, open pipeline of communication between you and I, and me and the chief as a chief, and hopefully as an interim. But I'm confident in that. But I just wanted to say it because sometimes little things you can get somebody involved that doesn't expedite, and it can cost somebody $15,000, $20,000 because they've had to wait on an inspection for a few weeks that was unnecessary. So if we can, I'm gonna hush. I'm repeating.
Well, there's a big project out there that you're probably familiar with that needs to be completed by January 1st, or they're gonna lose their tenant. And so, and that at the cost of tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I don't know. So I understand.
Let me say real quick, I can add to, a lot of what our business at M&B does is done on piggyback. A lot of small counties that buy milk can't go through the process of putting out bids and going through it. So I don't think piggybacking's a bad thing. It just, this time scares me. I think you're making the right decision. Just tell them before you sign that contract, if we come to you with a genuine concern, we expect y'all to listen. That's all I'm asking. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
You can, but we also, well,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, let me let the public finish, and then we do have a potential interim city managers here, if you guys want to add. So, are there other members of the public who wish to comment? Councilmember Donahue.
I want to address your situation, Mr. McClellan. I also know that, we've seen in the last year the tragedy that happened when inspections were not done as they should have been down in South Florida when the building collapsed. We are also not going to allow that to happen. So there won't be any slipshod inspections around here. Things are going to remain the same. And I appreciate the fact that you've done so much work to find us somebody who has a reputation with other cities and have been vetted, and those things are important. That means we're not just picking the guy who's cost the least amount of money. So we're going to try and stay as protective of our builders as we possibly can. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. So, would you like to hear from Dr. Spina? Well, Councilmember Schisler, have you been able to hear all of this?
Yes, I have, very much so. Thank you. If I may, first of all, on behalf of residents who said stuff to me, even being gone, thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, and to you, Chief Albano. You guys have done a tremendous amount of work in keeping everything stable since last Tuesday. But no, I've heard everything, and I think I have enough information based upon what I've heard and what I read to form a motion if you're ready for that.
Well, why don't I'll come back to you on that, Mr. Vice Mayor, but if it's okay with you, I'd like to bring Dr.
That's fine.
Spina up to kind of let the council members interact with him a little bit, and I don't know if, Rob, if you want to come.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Thank you.
So I know probably more about both of you but it'd be good if everybody kind of could get a little sense of who you are and.
My name is Rob Duncan. I'm the Managing Director of Imagine That Performance. With me is Dr. Steve Spina, and I'm going to try to cede the floor to him for the most part so you can interact with Dr. Spina. But the proposal I did put before you, I'm a local business. I live right up the road, and I have stood here before. So as a servant to the city of Temple Terrace, I would like to just offer further assistance in that area, and any questions I'm certainly happy to answer.
Very good.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I'm Steve Spina. I can answer questions or talk about myself a little bit, whichever you prefer.
If you don't mind, would you tell we've seen your bio, but the public hasn't, and I think it's important that the public have some sense of who you are. And
Okay, I was the city manager in Zephyr Hills for 20 years. I was in the planning department prior to that, so I had about, I think it was 29 years experience with the city of Zephyr Hills. I live just up the road off of Morrisbridge Road, actually. I currently am teaching at USF in the Masters of Public Administration program. This semester I am teaching 2 classes, and I'm actually taking a class in Africana Studies, which is just kind of an interest of mine. I was the interim town manager in Kenneth City in Pinellas County over the summer, and that was a situation where they lost their manager, then they lost their clerk, then they lost their administrative assistant, and then the other administrative assistant, they hired an interim city manager, and then she left. So we kind of came in and got them through a PBA contract negotiation, and the budget were the primary functions of my job while I was over there. Zephyr Hills is a full-service city. It's got about, when I was there, it had 15,000 residents. Now it's up to about 17,000 full departments. And I'm willing to come in and help. I have no interest in a permanent job. I retired 2.5 years ago from Zephyr Hills, and since that time I've been doing work at USF.
very good. Council members, open it up. Councilmember Abel.
Well, this is a disclosure more than anything else, but Dr. Spina works for USF for the MPA program, and I'm part of that program, and I also am employed by that program. So I talked to the city attorney about this, and it's not a conflict, but I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware. I don't report directly to Dr. Spina. I report to somebody else, but we will attend meetings together sometimes. So I don't know if you knew that, but I just thought I'd make sure.
I found out today.
Well, now we've made that connection, so.
Yeah, today I made the connection, so. Yeah, and just so you know, I am teaching through April, and I have given my notice to USF. I might do some adjunct work in the future, but currently I'm a visiting instructor, and I was kind of full-time, 3 classes, and I've told them I'm not interested in doing that anymore. So as of April, I'll be complete. Another disclosure is one of my classes is Tuesday evenings, which is your council night. So through April, I wouldn't be able to attend council meetings because I have that commitment.
So Rob and I talked about that a little bit. So Rob, could you kind of, or one of you, could you speak to that a little bit? Because that is a gap. And so what would we do about that?
Yeah, so tonight, Dr. Spina is here with me, but there's other members of the team that are actually here with us. So Michelle Berger and Lynn Ladner, 2 members of the team, are actually watching this on live stream right now. So kudos to Temple Terrace for getting this out so that people across the state and actually out of state that are part of our team are listening in. The plan would be in the short term, assuming we agree that not just an interim manager but also a transition team would be necessary, is we would outline how we would cover that with the transition team. So I'm local, I will be here, but Michelle recently became available, and potentially having her here for council meetings to assist Steve with some other items, that could also be in the best interest of the city.
So
The
let-
idea is to have the transition team in place and for us to negotiate exactly what the city would like, and then we can make sure we have that covered. But I will always be at your council meetings. I tend to come to a lot anyway, but having somebody sit at the dais as your representative is what we would do at every meeting.
So somebody from your team will be here.
Yes, if that's the council's direction.
It-
You
it-
have options.
Sure, it would be. We're gonna want somebody here.
Absolutely, yes. You have options. You've had staff members sit up when they weren't in that role. So I'm just saying, you have options, as soon as you're dealing with the contractor, someone's gonna say, oh, your residents are very intelligent, they know that comes at the price. So I wanna make sure, we're always being transparent. But yes, we would always have somebody here, and more than likely always have at least two of us here. So again, I plan on being here all the time, and at least one of our members will be here. But this will be the city manager, interim city manager, and whoever's here is at his behalf anyway. Okay, so it's still gonna be under the direction of your interim city manager. So as the attorney can speak to this probably better, but somebody's gonna have to be sworn in as your interim city manager. That'll be one person, and it won't be back and forth. It'll be one person through the duration, just other people that are assisting that can help out for the meetings. And I think it's only gonna affect 3 meetings. But it shouldn't affect the meetings that get into the budget, which is why we felt it was appropriate for Steve to be the lead.
Well, the budget meetings can be scheduled at council's convenience, but our council meetings are established by charter, so. Other questions,
I do. You
Councilman?
mentioned we have a team, so we hire Dr. Skinner, sorry, and then a team comes with him?
Well,
How does that work?
I can address that if
Yeah.
you don't mind me stepping
Yeah,
in,
I-
because I had extensive conversation with Mr. Duncan about this. What we get for the proposed amount of money that we got in our proposal, what we get for that is Dr. Spina. So any additional, like à la carte services, they have to bring in specialists for finance or HR or somebody like that, that's on a per hour basis in addition.
Okay.
So the team is available, but the only thing we get for the money that is in the proposal is Dr. Spina.
And at some point, you would say, you need to bring in a team, if you felt that was a need. Okay, I get it, okay.
So if he, I see some questions, if Dr. Spina comes in and says, okay, your entire permitting, or not, that's a bad example, if he comes in and says, all right, we need help in Department X,
There you go.
and so we need to get somebody in here to help this director or help to develop your staff, that would be available to us, but not for the same money that we're paying for this. So that's extra. And of course, we would have to authorize that, right? We would have to say, okay, tell us why, what's the issue, what exactly do we need to know? But the other thing that Mr. Duncan said is, you may have to get somebody, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need somebody 40 hours a week either. You might need somebody to come in for half a day to give your staff some direction in a certain area, but you might not need them more than that. So, does that,
Not really.
No?
I mean,
Okay.
Some of that did, but my bigger question was, on the council meeting nights that you're not available and Mr. Duncan or somebody else is sitting in that chair, do we pay extra for that sitting in the chair for those nights?
The recommendation that I would have, so until we had conversations, it was really hard for me to think of everything the city could possibly need and put into a proposal. So we started with the basic. Based on the conversations I had with the mayor and what I've understood talking to the chief, my recommendation would be for us to say, you're getting this and, a fixed budget for a certain number of hours. So I really believe having two sets of ears come in as part of a transition team should be the minimum to help the city. It's in the city's best interest, and we got to put a cap on the hours. But if we say, okay, let's say it's 20 hours a week for 3 weeks or something along those lines, then we can budget. Instead of it being a per hour basis, it's fixed cost. We know who's going to be doing it. Michelle will be here for the time that we need her here, and then we can put that into a price. We certainly would back out the hours that we expected the city manager to be at the council meeting. That shouldn't be a problem, right? So we're not looking to double dip, obviously, and have someone paid to be here and then pay someone else to be here. That's certainly not going to be the intention, so that'll be pretty clear.
And I can work around a couple Tuesdays. One Tuesday is spring break, which I think is your third Tuesday in March. And there's one Tuesday in April that I've scheduled a night off for the class, and I could come that night. So I've kind of checked ahead a little bit, and I can make a couple
Yeah,
of
so
them.
so
Yes,
two of the
Dr.
four in question
Yeah.
should be addressed.
Yeah. February's not good, but I can arrange one meeting in March and April.
Go ahead.
Okay, so to move forward with this idea, do we approve Dr. Spinner and then authorize someone, you or someone, to negotiate the contract?
Yeah, I've got some language for you to consider, but let me go to Vice Mayor Schistler to see, did you have, while they're standing up here, Vice Mayor, did you want to ask any questions or gain clarification?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other question I had would be in selecting, or the selection process for the ultimate permanent or regular city manager. What type of services will be included for that or available for that on a search, if any?
Oh, okay, so it's a fair question, and in the past, the council has actually struggled over this. So I've been here as the council tried to figure out how to go and recruit a permanent city manager. And depending on the path the council wants to go, we may be able to supplement or may not. So if the council decides to hire a third-party firm to conduct the search, which, to be honest, that's probably what I would recommend. Then what we could do is we can run the RFP process using our expertise. We have done procurement, and we can say, here it is. Here's the RFP process, put it out, let them bid, let them bring their proposals here. They can make presentations if you want, and then you can choose a firm. So in that case, we would help just run the RFP process, and then they're your partner, and we'll do through the city manager's office what we need to do to facilitate that process. Okay, that's the path that I would recommend. If you decide to do internal, you can decide to make that choice, and then we'd be supplementing that however we can. But again, the only way I'd be able to help there is you're paying on an hourly basis, and it may not be the most efficient process. So.
Oh, and that is something that that's not a decision point for tonight, but I'll tell you that when we get to that discussion, which hopefully we'll do within the next couple of weeks, it's gonna be my strong recommendation and the advice of everybody I have talked to, that we get a recruiting firm and that we go through RFP. Folks, we have some immediate things we need to act quickly on this, but then we need to slow down. We do not need to rush the recruitment process for the next city manager. That is something we need to take our time, get it right, do it according to the professional advice, not somebody's cousin's neighbor that we know, right? This has gotta be done right, and that takes time. That's gonna take 6 to 9 months probably realistically to get that done. So that's not for tonight, but we need to go meticulous, slow, methodical, careful, professional, all of that. But they will be in place to help us with the RFP processes.
Help you choose. We will not be submitting
Yeah.
to do that service. That's not a service that as a firm.
So Vice Mayor, you still have the floor, or the table as it were.
Now, I have the information I think I need. Thank you.
Okay. Are there other questions for these?
I don't.
No.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you. And so
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
probably a little out of order, but if you'll indulge me, I'd like to open it up again for public comment. Just if where members of the public are here, are there members of the public who would like to provide any comment at this point? Okay. So I'm asking for a motion to do one of two things, to either task this interim, Chief Albano, ex officio city manager, to either task him with beginning a recruitment process for an interim, or authorize me to negotiate. I guess he's not gonna make the motion. Or to authorize, I would ask me, because the interim's
Yeah.
reports to us as opposed to the chief. Can you turn that off? Thank you. So whichever option you want to do. Now, on this one, we do need to exercise the emergency procurement process, correct? Right, we don't have the two.
Now it's back on.
Vice Mayor Stichler?
Sorry, yes.
Oh.
Okay. So let me recap a little bit because he dropped off. So bear with me, let me say it again. So right now, I'm asking for a motion to do one of two things. One is to direct Chief Albano, as acting city manager, to begin a recruitment process for an interim city manager. Or two is to authorize me to enter into a contract with Imagine That Performance LLC to provide interim city manager services according to their proposal. If we do that, we will need to exercise our emergency procurement clause in our rules. We don't have the piggyback option available on this one.
I think I'm ready. I hope I've got it written right.
Okay. Did you get all that, Vice Mayor Schisler?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. Okay.
I'm ready to,
Looking for a motion.
Councilmember Donahue, she beat you to it.
No problem. I didn't hear what the motion was.
I move to authorize Mayor Ross to negotiate a contract with Imagine That Performance LLC to provide interim city manager responsibilities using the emergency process.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
We all seconded.
I'm going to say Councilmember Abel got in under the wire there. Second by Councilmember Abel. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
No nays, the motion passes. Okay. That's all, those are both of the action items we had for you tonight. Now, we do need to, we've had some of this conversation already, we do need to very soon talk about the process that we will put in place for the selection of a permanent. That will be much easier to put that together now than it might have been.
Yeah.
So, I would say probably, you know, to give us a little time to get Dr. Spinney in here and
Will
get
that be at
things.
a regular meeting?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I think probably the special meetings, emergency meetings, I don't see a need for that right now. We have a regular scheduled council meeting next week. By then, both of these things should be in place and we should be able to tell you where we are with this. So I really think things will begin to slow down. This week has been a blur, but I think now that we have some plans in place here and have your approval, I think that everything should begin to slow down a bit. And get Dr. Spin in here and a chance to kind of assess and see where we are. But I think unless something unexpected happens, I would anticipate we should be able to handle our business from here on out on regular council meetings without emergency.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So, is there any other business to come before the council? If not, I'm going to say we're adjourned. Thank you.